Hello and welcome to the Daily Climate Show, where we track the changes to our world and interrogate some of the potential solutions to the climate crisis. Now, efforts have been too slow in the Cinderella of climate action. That's how the head of the Environment Agency described the UK's adaptation to the impacts of climate change. In a speech today, Sir James Bevan warned that if the UK doesn't adjust to the ever-changing environment, future generations will be left to pick up the pieces. Now, this comes as a new report predicts the number of homes in England at risk of flooding could nearly double in the next 30 years, which is pushing for more focus on nature-based solutions. But what does this mean? Well, the National Infrastructure Commission says £12 billion of investment in drainage systems is needed for homes to adapt as climate change brings more intense and frequent heavy rainfall. But it's urged for nature-based solutions to be looked into before digging more pipes and sewers. Now, among the suggestions are roof gardens, where the soil absorbs rainwater, slowing down the impact of heavy rainfall. And rain gardens, too. They manage rainwater runoff from hard surfaces after downpours by planting an attractive, low-maintenance, wildlife-friendly space. And ponds. They can manage flood risk and create habitats for many different kinds of wildlife. Well, I'm joined now by our climate reporter, Victoria Seabrook. So hundreds of thousands more homes could be at risk of flooding in the coming years, Victoria. What are the main reasons for this?
Well, essentially, for all too long, we've been building waterproof towns and cities. When you think of where you live at home, you go down your street, there's hard roofs, hard walls, paved driveways, tarmacked roads and so on. So there's nowhere for the water to go. So, of course, it accumulates in gutters. And when you have very heavy, intense flooding, it all builds up in this way, different to a river overflowing, which happens over a longer course of time and is a bit easier to predict. And the reason why this is getting worse is partly because of climate change. The air is getting warmer, it can hold more water, and it's concentrating rain into sort of smaller, heavier bursts. That's why we're seeing more of this kind of flooding. And then the other reason, of course, is urbanisation. We are building more and more. And so the government advisors are saying the government really needs to start obliging developers when they're building homes, for example, to build in some of these solutions that we've just heard about. For example, ponds that maybe are dry for a lot of the year, but then can fill up when we have these intense rain events.
Now, this report on the increased risk of flooding comes as the boss of the Environment Agency also has issued a pretty stark warning to the UK about the need for adaptation. Tell us more about that.
Yes, exactly. So he's warning about the impact on the economy, on health, and crucially on our critical infrastructure. So if you think, for example, of the 40-degree heat wave that we had this summer, that disrupted rail travel, that grounded flights. Storm Arwen last year left 1 million people without power. And this is all because we've been a bit better at cutting emissions, which is the cause of climate change, than we have adapting to the impacts. And obviously you need to tackle the root cause, but those changes are already in effect. Think of it as like a big cargo ship. If you want to turn it, it takes a long time before you start to see the movement, and we haven't been so good at adapting to those impacts. That is a problem not just in the UK, but the world over. Generally, we've been a lot slower when it comes to adaptation. But the UK has had a lot of criticism for this recently. MPs warning that the government lacked a grip, accusing it of a severe dereliction of duty. And I think we will start to hear more strong criticism like this until the government really knuckles down on adapting, the flooding being a case in point.
OK, Victoria, we appreciate your update. Thank you. Now, the government is to buy a £700 million stake in the Sizewell C nuclear power station. It's a move which will see China ousted from the project. It comes as the national grid was close to implementing its blackout prevention scheme yesterday. The French nuclear power industry is currently in turmoil, and suppliers are warning that they are struggling to cope with demand. Sizewell C claims to generate around 7% of the UK's electricity needs, But with yesterday's wake-up call, is nuclear still the best path to energy security? Well, we can take a look at the live power mix on our data dashboard, which shows that around 11% of our energy is currently coming from nuclear today. Well, joining me now to give us a bit more context on all of this is Richard Black, Senior Associate at the Energy and Climate Intelligence Unit. A very warm welcome to you, Richard. Well, the government is investing nearly £700 million in Sizewell C now, which will end China's involvement. Can we begin with your reaction to this?
I think the government is taking what you could call a more honest approach to Sizewell than it has to Hinkley, which is the sister station, which is a bit further along. Because basically they've said this is a matter of national necessity. That's their judgment. And therefore, why doesn't the state invest in it? It is kind of interesting to reflect that here we have a Conservative government which is making a big state-led intervention in energy policy, when actually the other alternative, the renewables and storage solutions side of things, is largely private sector financed, and basically all a government has to do is sort of get the red tape out of the way and let the money flow in. So you have a Conservative government doing something that in many people's eyes I think would be very unconservative here.
And Richard, what risk do you think it could have posed keeping China involved in Sizewell C?
Yeah, hard to say. I mean, my belief has always been, I'm not an expert in these things, but my belief, if a malicious actor wants to take out a part of the energy infrastructure, they'd probably find a way. So I'm not sure it matters that much in terms of energy security. China still has, a big stake in the North Sea, for example, oil and gas production, and the bulk of the solar industry. The production starts in China. So you can't wipe China out of the energy mix entirely.
Now, certainly it does represent a U-turn in terms of the UK's energy policy, this huge investment in Sizewell C. Is nuclear the future, do you think?
No, I don't think it is. I think globally it's going to be a bit part player in the future. I mean, the number of nuclear reactors operating in the world and the amount of electricity that they produce has remained flat for about 20 years. And that's really because as time goes on, the alternatives, renewables and storage, just look economically far more attractive. So, from an engineering point of view, having a few nuclear reactors on the system producing baseload power can make management of the grid a bit easier at the moment. But there's no doubt that Britain could run in the future with 100% renewables, provided you have the backup from storage and demand response and all the other things.
Now, we nearly had to resort to that blackout prevention plan yesterday. Have we become too reliant on French nuclear energy?
I think you've got to have a diversity of supplies, and in the past it's proved it's proved quite reliable to import electricity from the continent, and then at other times of the year, British wind farms and so on export electricity to the continent. So I think interconnecting cables are generally a very good thing. It's just that a lot of the French nuclear fleet is getting quite old, and they're having these reliability problems which have also cropped up in the UK a little bit as well. It's really the confluence of these different factors, with low wind and so on, and gas prices being so huge. But I think the important point to make is that we didn't come close to a blackout. We came close to having to implement a blackout prevention measure. That's a good thing, isn't it?
OK, Richard, it's been fascinating to talk to you. Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Time for some of today's other climate news now. And the Prime Minister is being urged to lead the way on international negotiations to secure a deal to reverse biodiversity loss by attending COP15. The WWF is calling for countries to commit to the goal of conserving at least 30% of the world's land, wetlands and oceans by 2030 at the United Nations meeting in Montreal next month. The government has said it remains absolutely committed in leading action to tackle climate change and protect nature, and that the Environment Secretary, Therese Coffey, will be attending the talks. Australia's Environment Minister has hit back at a UN report that has recommended moving the Great Barrier Reef to endangered status. The UN Cultural Agency and the International Union for Conservation and Nature's report warned that without ambitious, rapid and sustained climate action, the world's largest reef is in peril. But Tanya Pilbasek said the report is a reflection on Australia's previous government and that her party are already addressing the issues highlighted.
If the Great Barrier Reef is in danger, then every coral reef in the world is in danger. If this World Heritage Site is in danger, then most World Heritage Sites around the world are in danger from climate change. We are, as a government, absolutely determined to do our bit to keep global warming beneath 1.5 degrees. We've legislated, we've invested, we're working hard to make sure that that's the case through all of our policies.
And a type of seaweed that's been discovered in the Antarctic region, 100 metres below the surface, could play a huge role in protecting the environment. Scientists were trying to find out the maximum depth seaweed can live underwater near Adelaide Island off the southwestern Antarctic peninsula. Seaweed is an important carbon sequestration tool as it's able to store carbon and can help to reduce ocean acidification. Now, Latin America contains some of the world's most biodiverse forest ecosystems, yet more than 40% of the region's forests have been cleared or degraded to make way for mining, agricultural and infrastructure projects. Now, in the slopes of the Peruvian Andes, one man is leading Indigenous communities in a push to protect forests, which are critical for fighting climate change.
At Action Andina and ECOAN, we have more than 25,000 indigenous families working along all the Andes, planting more than 60,000 trees in a single day. This is the communal work. It's better to work with the local communities. Why? They, in the future, they are going to be engaged on the process and they are going to be the perfect allies because we are reviving that ancient practice from the indigenous culture.
And winner of the UN Champion of the Earth Award, the highest environmental honour awarded by the UN, Tino Alca, joins me now from Peru. A very warm welcome to you, Tino. Thank you for joining us. Now, you've been involved in conservation for decades. Describe how you've seen your home change due to climate change.
Thank you so much for this interview. For me, conservation and doing all practices on ground with the real solutions is my mission, is my life. Sometimes I think if I want to do something concrete, going to do whatever can be to fight against the climate change.
Now, you've been pushing local communities to protect forests across South America. Explain to us how you've been doing that.
I think that the world couldn't be pushing. I believe that planting 100 trees or 1,000 trees is not the solution. That probably is for the picture in some front page of the magazine. The solution is to plant millions of trees. But who is going to plant all that millions of trees? Of course, it's going to be with the communities because communities has the power, has the organization, and the commitment to come and help me in this program to plant all these millions. They can do it reviving this ancient activity that is the communal work. And in that way, is the only possibility that we can do it that along all the Andes.
And what do you hear about how climate change has impacted the life of locals? What do they tell you?
Every time the locals, they are suffering all the time. Like this year, the rains are arriving after 2 months. Most of the agriculture has collapsed. And for them, it's not, they don't tell that is a climate change. They say something we are doing wrong. It's amazing to hear all these local communities when they pointed me the mountains where they lost the snow. They said, hey, that mountain 30 years ago was with the snow. Now, no more. Probably we are doing something wrong, and the Mother Earth is angry about that. Imagine that simple conclusion. If the rest of the world can do it the same thing, probably the entire world can take action and do whatever can be to restore the world and stop all these problems that is coming on the name of the climate change.
What more help do you want to see from the international community? And what did you make of what you heard come from them at the Climate Change Summit in Sharm el-Sheikh?
Sorry if I'm going to say this, but it's the 27th meeting. What is the solution? What is the conclusion? Nothing of action. It's only agreements and agreements. How many meetings more we need to take action? We are fighting for 2 grades, and the world is claiming for that. What else we need to take action? Please remember, my organization, Acción Andina, is trying to do this along the Andes, and we are growing and growing more. 6 million trees at the moment is not nothing. We need to put more trees on the ground and secure the water. That is the most important thing on the lives of all the local communities.
Now, you've previously said a rather wonderful phrase. You said, we must work hard to run faster than the destruction. Do you have hope that the world will eventually come together and do this?
When I attend to the COP14 in Lima, and after not seeing any result, what I did, I get back home and united all my community and said, let's send a message to the world. What can we do it if we are organized? That day we planted over 57,000 trees in a single day. After that, we are not stopping. We are going to show to the rest of the world with a concrete results, with more action, what they have to do it. When I talk on the United Nations in 2019, I tell to everybody, please abandon the ego, abandon the comfort. Communities are claiming for more action, and the Mother Earth needs it. Let's take care for this single home that we are still living here.
OK, Tino Auca, we appreciate your time today and we admire your work. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Thank you.
Let's take action, please.
And a reminder that on Saturdays and Sundays, you can catch Tom Heap's Climate Show. That is on at 3:30 in the afternoon, also at 7:30 in the evening, right here on Sky News. But for now, that is all from me. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.